Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the hybrid class. The hybrid video class is going to consist of two components, really. It's going to be a review of what we did last week, and then I'm going to assess what we did last week in terms of what you turned in, determine what we need to move forward, and hopefully provide you with some information that's going to move the project for the week forward. And probably a third component is we'll have a short exercise. So let's get started. Label your variable, define your variable, and measurement of the outcome. Basically, ladies and gentlemen, what I want to make sure that you do in your single subject research design drafts is I want you to make sure that you label that qualitative and quantitative variable. Now, labeling the quantitative variable is going to be pretty straightforward. Weight, ounces, glucose level, procrastination. Those are going to be pretty straightforward. Now, labeling your qualitative variables may be a little bit more challenging, but it's also going to be fun. But what you want to do when you're labeling that qualitative variable is you want to make sure that you're giving your audience an idea, a visual of the concept that you want to bring to life through measurement. And so if you're talking, for example, about, your views towards becoming a vegan, then you might call it, perspectives on veganism, or something catchy, something that's fun, something that's going to catch the eye of the audience, but it's also going to give them a visual of the concept that you're trying to portray. I'll talk a little bit more about that when I go through some of the examples. Secondly, you got to define the variable. Again, when we're talking about that quantitative indicator, it's going to be pretty much straightforward. You can define weight as defined by pounds on a scale. You can define a quart as defined by 32 ounces fluid, 32 ounces of liquid. I'm not going to even try and define how we would measure glucose. I'll leave that to Claudia. Nonetheless, so defining that quantitative variable is going to be pretty straightforward. But again, when you get to the qualitative, I'm going to talk a little bit more about qualitative methods to sort of move you along. It's going to be a little bit more difficult. And so, ladies and gentlemen, when you're measuring that or you're defining that qualitative variable, what I want you to do is think in terms of themes. When we're talking about, for example, my SSRd, around anxiety towards eating cookies during class time. One of the themes is I feel guilty. I feel guilty because I know that I made a commitment not to eat cookies during class time. Another thing that I might talk about as a qualitative definition of my anxiety towards eating a cookie during class time are the views towards students. I've actually made this pact with you, this social contract, that I'm not going to eat a cookie during class time. So that's something that I also might discuss. So when you're defining that qualitative variable in your SSRd, a great way to think about it is in terms of 2 or 3 themes that you can document. All right? So that's our first slide. Excuse me, because I don't have a clicker. All right. So let's go to one of the examples that we used last week, and it was Elaine's example around weight loss. And so weight loss, again, a pretty straightforward definition of her quantitative variable. We know that you can define weight loss in terms of pounds and that you're going to use a scale. Great operational definition. A second measurement would be waist size. And we know that you could either look at your waist size or you can measure around your thighs, and you could do that in terms of energy. But then when we get down here to the qualitative variable, then we're talking about energy. And when we talk about energy and weight loss, some of the themes that we usually talk about are fatigue, sleep, desire to sleep, but then there are also those positive themes that are related to energy, like high energy levels or duration of energy or intensity of energy. So there are 3 or 4 themes that you can use to capture this qualitative notion of energy. That's Elaine's example. Or let's go to Paul's example. Again, Paul is talking about that, he is going to measure his movement or his progress towards becoming a vegan. And so then he can talk about the percentage of his meals throughout the day that are vegan versus not, or vegetarian versus vegan versus not. And so quantitatively, he can use this percentage. Let's say Paul eats 2 meals a day, one is vegan, one is not, 50%. Let's say Paul eats 2 meals a day and he really wanted that burger, and so 0 meals were vegan and 2 meals were regular meals, then he's got a 0%. So he's got a clear quantitative indicator. But I like Paul's qualitative indicator as well, because he talks about understanding sort of the principles, or understand being a vegan. And understand being a vegan can consist of a lot of things. Exactly what is a vegan meal? His feelings towards what exactly is a vegan meal. Paul might want to cheat a little bit and say, well, you know what? That's really vegan. Y'all are not saying it's vegan, but it is vegan. So understanding towards being a vegan would be considered a great label for a qualitative indicator. Let's look at one more example. Eva. Now, Eva is talking about procrastination. She's been talking about she wants to reduce her level of procrastination in terms of doing her reading. And so, there's several ways that you can look at this. You can look at this in terms of hours. What is the difference between the time Eva said that she was going to do it versus the time that elapsed when she actually did it? So let's say she said she was going to read at 10 o'clock and she didn't read until 11 o'clock, then that means she procrastinated for an hour. Or let's say she said she was going to read at 10 o'clock on Tuesday and she didn't read p.m. on Tuesday night, and she didn't read till 10 a.m. on Wednesday morning, then that means she procrastinated for 12 hours. She's got to measure. Or she can measure it in days. She can measure it in hours. Or if she really gets good and stops procrastinating, she can measure it in seconds. All right. The other piece is the anxiety. And I think that this is a great qualitative indicator myself. Because when you look at your anxiety that's related to procrastination, well, you think that once you start out on this journey of this SSRd, your procrastination is going to be relatively high, because the number of times that you procrastinate is going to be relatively high, so your anxiety is going to be high. But as your procrastination levels go down, hopefully, based on your intervention, then your anxiety is going to go down as well. And so I think that anxiety in terms of, I would probably think of anxiety in terms of the worry that I had in terms of not completing the task, the pressure that I feel in terms of not meeting the task, maybe the lack of concentration that I have on other roles that I play or other tasks that I have, the lack of concentration on those as a result of the anxiety and the pressure that results. But again, 3 or 4 things that sort of capture this qualitative variable is really all that you need in terms of a definition. Let's try one more. Who we got here? We got Kim. Again, we're talking about weight loss here. We're talking about weight in pounds. So we've got our label for our quantitative variable. We sort of defined it. We're going to measure it in pounds, and of course we're going to do that with a scale. Kim talked a little bit about her intervention over here, which is something that everybody's going to definitely have to begin to document as clear as possible. But then she talks about sort of the culture, and I really love this. I really like this theme of culture, or you could also talk about stress management. Let's talk about culture, because Kim's been very clear about her culture, and how it might contribute to weight loss or weight gain. Kim from North Carolina, like her homie, go Panthers, go Panthers. Sam, I know you're out there hating on the Panthers. Texans next year. But, Kim's talked about the way that food is cooked, the way that food is viewed, her feelings towards food, and her culture. These are 3 outstanding things that would give a researcher some insight as to whether Kim is successful in terms of this SSRd. So she's got a great label here: culture, or views towards food, or culture towards food, or the culture of food for someone from North Carolina. Have fun with these qualitative labels, ladies and gentlemen. They will help lead your audience to understand things. All right. I want to talk a little bit. Now I'm going to go back and do Claudia's piece because I don't want Claudia to be feeling left out. All right, so Claudia talked about glucose. It's going to be straightforward with a quantitative. She's going to impose diet and exercise. And I'm not sure right now what Claudia's qualitative piece may be. Now, if I recall her paper correctly, I know that she talked a little bit about some anxiety and some stress around this issue. I hope, Claudia, I'm going off point here. What I'm going to do is step off, and I'm actually going to look right now. I've got your paper, and you know what? In Claudia's piece, from a qualitative standpoint, I gotta check and see, but I know one thing that I circled here, Claudia, was mood. And I think that when we're talking about weight loss, mood is definitely. I was irritable, I was happy, I was sad, I was sort of in between, I was sort of indifferent. Those are 3 or 4 things that you can talk about with mood when you're talking about weight loss. Mood is definitely an issue when you talk about weight loss. So here with Claudia, we've got glucose, and Claudia is the expert in how she'll measure glucose level. We've got a potential qualitative indicator in mood. Again, happy, sad, indifferent towards her weight loss or towards her consumption or towards her glucose level. And those are sort of sub things, Claudia, that you could explore. All right, ladies and gentlemen, the one thing that I really want to talk about tonight, and this is the part where I call moving you forward. All right, now, we haven't talked a lot about qualitative research. I'm not sure if you talked about it in Research 1. So I'm going to give you 3 methods that I think are most pertinent to the work that you're doing. First of all, I have to say this. If you talked about a scale as you're measuring your qualitative indicator, that's not quite correct, because anytime we talk about ratio interval, ordinal nominal, levels of measurement, that's quantitative by nature. Now, we can always quantify qualitative variables, but that's not what we want to do here. We want thoughts, feelings, and behavior. So one way to collect that will be through journaling. And if you want a surefire way to do well in this assignment, consider journaling, because I think that journaling is an outstanding qualitative method. The second, participant observation. You may be, how are we going to do participant observation? What are we going to do, look at ourselves? No. If someone else, you could ask someone else, you would give them 2 or 3 things. Let's go back to Claudia's piece around mood. So let's say Claudia had someone who could observe her mood when she wants it to be measured, let's say twice a week. She has someone who can observe her mood. Then someone can observe Claudia's mood and document that for her. That would be another way. So in this way, you can do it yourself. In this way, you can have someone do it. Now, ethnography is a little bit different, because it's not just journaling necessarily some themes, but it's the whole journey. It's the whole journey around your intervention as well as the themes. So it's sort of documenting your whole project. So not only would you document, let's say, the culture. Let's go back to Kim's example, the culture around food. Not only would you document, your feelings towards food and how feeling plays into your culture and how your parents see food and how, your significant other sees food, and, when you eat food, like, I like to eat a lot of food around the football games, or when you don't eat food. It's not just that, but it will also include the intervention. It's the interaction between the intervention and your actual feelings towards the culture of food. But let's stay safe, ladies and gentlemen. I recommend the first 2 methods. If you go with journaling or you go with participant observation in terms of documenting your qualitative methods, you're going to be just fine. All right? And I think it would be best because it's going to give you an opportunity to learn about qualitative methods. All right. Now, you probably can't see this, okay? But one of the things that I need you to do, and here's whether or not I'm going to know that you looked at this video, ladies and gentlemen. I need for everybody to make sure that they email me, let's say within, by Thursday, the area of the Madonna Center that your group is going to review. So this is what I need. I need for one person from each dyad, each 2 or 3, to send me an email saying, Dr. Gill, this is what area of the Madonna Center that we're going to cover. And those areas are in the surveys that I passed out during class. Ladies and gentlemen, please make sure that in your emails that every group member is on that email so that I know who are in groups. So let's review again. 1, I need a leader from each group. 2, send me an email that documents what area of the Madonna Center that your program evaluation will cover. I need to make sure, or you need to make sure, that everyone in that dyad or triad is included on the email. And briefly, ladies and gentlemen, what I need for you to start thinking about now with regard to your program evaluation, because I know this is not the best diagram or it's difficult to see, but right now I really need you to think about the outcomes, okay? I need you to think about the outcomes that you're going to measure before an intervention, all right? And ladies and gentlemen, what you really will benefit from doing is going back over the slides on group research designs, and first of all, deciding what kind of design you want to employ, okay? What's probably most important for next class is that you begin to think about outcomes. We're going to have to play around with this intervention piece, but what you want to envision, let's say, for example, if you're looking at daycare services for the Madonna Center, and you want to evaluate an increase in daycare services as a result of an intervention, like putting out flyers in a specific part of town, or having a commercial, or bringing in residents for an open house. So as a result of that particular intervention, how many people were in daycare before, and as a result of the intervention, how many people were in daycare, let's say 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, or 4 months after. So what is critical around preparing for this program intervention draft is looking at the slides from group research designs and find design. Kim, I remember you said, Doc, I don't know what to call it. Well, now you don't have to necessarily know what to call it for your SSRd, but you have to know what to call it for your program evaluation. So I want you to pick out a design and begin to think about outcomes. But first, I'm always thinking about incomes, ladies and gentlemen. Y'all know I'm poor. But first, what I need for you to do is to make sure that you send me that email with the area of the Madonna Center that you're going to evaluate and your group members. All right, lastly, ladies and gentlemen, and this will probably only take you about 10 minutes. Really think about this, because it's going to help you with one part of your program evaluation, and that's a brief exercise for next week. What I want you to do is document a process, your own personal process. So I want you to document what you do when you wake up, or I want you to document what you do when you go to bed, PG only. Or I want you to document what you do when you go to lunch, or I want you to document what you do when you make plans for the weekend, or I want you to document what you do when you prepare for a difficult conversation. This needs to be a handwritten piece, and there need to be at least 7 steps, and I only need for you to do one of these. But what I'm trying to do is prepare you for that process evaluation portion of your program evaluation. We're going to have to document a process at the Madonna Center, and I want you to know that documenting the process at the Madonna Center is no different than documenting a process in your own life. Listen, I hope this was helpful. I want to say to you that I'm very proud of what you've been doing thus far in the class. We're moving right along with that SSRd. We're going to move right through this program evaluation. What I want to let you know is that my doors are open, okay? If you need to come and talk to me about your work. We can get through this. We're going to make it through this. We're going to make it a fun class. We're going to make it a stress-free class. But most of all, we're going to make it a great learning experience. I look forward to seeing you next week. And remember, watch the Super Bowl. Go Panthers.